spoke volumes to you?
Oh my gosh, I devour books.
Yeah.
So it's been quite a few. Um, well, I mean, I revisit my own book and my own content a lot, which is
Okay.
conscious communications, and the lessons in that, because they're all about the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
I get a lot of hints in my life to read my own book,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of funny because I wrote it and wasn't like I studied it every day. I just wrote it. But
Yeah.
I've been reading, okay, so this is kind of strange, but I've been reading these books by an author named Lorna Byrne. And Lorna Byrne is fascinating to me. She's from Ireland. And the reason she's fascinating to me is because she has written several best-selling books,
Mm-hmm.
and she does not know how to read or write.
Really?
Yes. So just let that sink in for a second. She, I don't even know how to say this. Okay, so she talks to or sees angels
Mm-hmm.
or beings that she describes as angelic beings.
Mm-hmm.
And she has seen them her whole life. And because of this, she was labeled to be mentally retarded. And in those days and in Ireland, they did not educate those children. So she's probably in her late 50s.
Okay.
So in those days when she was a child, and also she grew up under the most poorest of circumstances.
Sure.
And so it was just understood. I mean, it wasn't like people were trying to be cruel. I'm just saying that's how it was back then. Like you
Yeah.
would not send this child to school, nor did, if they thought that you were, mentally retarded, they wouldn't have the services to be able to educate you anyway. So she didn't learn how to read or write. But if you listen to her speak, I mean, she will speak in ways that will blow your mind. Like, for example, she was talking about, in an interview I was watching her on, she was talking about how we need to stop taking oil out of the earth because our oil to the earth is like as important as blood is to our body. It's like oil, like we have to have a certain amount of omegas, like oil, but that we're taking too much oil out of the earth. And you would have, but the way she could speak about it for someone who doesn't have an education was just really mind blowing. Yeah. So she talks about, in these books, she talks about the angels and how the angels interact with us and how we have a guardian, and she sort of describes the different kind of angels. And so this was really interesting to me for whatever reason, but I knew that it was the right books because I was recently in San Diego and I'm listening to these books and I'm just crying. I'm just shedding all of these tears. So there's something that she was saying that hit me at a very deep resonant level. And one of those things was talking about purpose, because purpose is something I talk about a lot as well. And she was saying that it makes her very sad if she sees someone talking about purpose, but yet they've got like a child on their lap. And she was talking about how we need to understand that children is our purpose more than anything else. And I just cried for like 20 minutes because, I mean, how often do you hear someone say that in today's world?
Yeah, not often at all, or ever.
And I have two children, and in the way that she's absolutely right. It's like our purpose is staring and glaring at us in the face every single day, but maybe we don't recognize that as our purpose because we've been trained and programmed our whole lives to believe something else is, and I'm not saying that the something else still isn't important or still isn't purpose, but what I was hearing, and this was the message for me that I was getting that day, is that my children are also the purpose.
Yeah. Well, that is a profound and deep item to realize, especially at that time. How else have her books been speaking to you? Is it just kind of the interviews, or is it really like kind of all of her books and the subject matter?
That's such a great question, because it's certainly not it's not a book I would historically have gone for, but I don't know. I just grabbed them and I devoured two of her books in one weekend. actually, while I was in San Diego at a business event, I was in my room and all of my free time just reading these books. Sometimes you grab a hold of a piece of content and it's just powerful to you. It may not be powerful to the next person, but for me, it was very powerful. And it was the message of that there is a driving force behind our life, behind our physical body. And it was very much in alignment with my own personal spiritual beliefs. But my own personal spiritual beliefs haven't always included things like angels, because I probably would lump angels in the like Christian churchianity concepts, sure, and sort of shy away from that.
Sure.
So I guess just opening my mind to these to these beings that are in another dimension that, I mean, I don't really know anything about, but the way she speaks about them, I was like, you know what? I like this. This feels good. And I want to learn more about this. And then at the end of one of the books, she has this like 7-day path to self-love. Mm-hmm. And so that was maybe part of it, because like I could work on doing these things that were associated with this self-love. So her theory is that when we're born, we're 100% pure love. And that as we go through life, we are closing that love off. We're locking parts. It never goes away fully, because it's always with our spirit or whatever you want to call that, your higher self, your soul, whatever you believe. Mm-hmm. But she says that we lock that love away. So when we get hurt, when we get, reprimanded as a child, when we go through traumas, we're locking that love away. And you can probably resonate with that yourself, because you've gone through some trauma and some healing processes. Yeah. When that heart space is like, it's like behind the iron cage.
Right.
Or it's frozen in ice, Yeah. And so she describes this, but she describes it as locking your love away. And that the way to bring out the love is that we do this 7-day path of self-love. And so that was really cool too, because I'm just kind of looking at those practices. And by the way, I'm like all about that. I think that that's one of the most important things, is that we love ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial mindset, because I feel like it goes hand in hand with what we're talking about. This, like, self-care, oftentimes like thinking about trauma healing, and what causes it, what is driving you, is often when people start companies or they start their own practices, it's not evident in the beginning. Sometimes it's out of like necessity or need, or just a passion for a project. But as time goes on, like those traumas will start to creep in and affect how you communicate, how you run your business, how you the type of people you attract. So in an entrepreneurial type of mindset, I know you've been doing your own work on this. How have you kind of noticed those connections, and how do you talk about the entrepreneurial mindset in general?
Well, so for me, everything in life is about creating connections. And the way that I see the world and frame up the world is to understand that like every choice that I'm making, everything I say, everything I do, every word that comes out of my mouth, every action I take, and every choice I make is either creating a deeper connection to things that I want, or it's driving a disconnection. Mm-hmm. And I sort of move through my life that way, is understanding that everything is a set of choices. But I think that when it comes to like, there's different ways to apply these concepts, and communication is really the biggest one for me, because that seems to be what I always gravitate towards talking about. Mm-hmm. And I know just the other day, when I'm sort of trying to level myself up and get to my next phase of entrepreneurship in my life, and do more things, which means a lot of times doing less day to day in your actual business itself. And one of the things that I just recently realized, like this aha, is understanding that my job as a CEO is more about creating expectations around my vision. Mm-hmm. And one of my staff members, she asked me this question. She's like, I'm just trying to figure out how I can best support you from going from a pioneer to a visionary. Mm-hmm. And that question just like, it was like fireworks in my mind, because it's just started to give me all kinds of ideas. And whenever I see something around me that's pulling me down, like pulling me back into the work instead of allowing me to stay in the vision, I'm like speaking up. Mm-hmm. So in our office, we call this going from level 4 to a level 5. So I'll just use that terminology because I can swing with it really quick. So sure. I noticed, like, for example, you know, I've just been going through this polar vortex in the Midwest, and a lot of our phone lines were down. Mm-hmm. And I had said to one of my staff members, I said, I want you to, the technician left his cell phone. I want you to call the technician. And the next day comes, and I said, hey, did you call that technician? She said, no. I said, why not? She said something that I just want to laugh about, but she's like, well, I called the phone line and it was working. And I'm like, okay, I know.
Okay, I get that. I picked up the phone at work now, so no, okay, yeah.
This problem is solved.
Right.
And I just inside, and I think any entrepreneur will understand this, I literally could feel my blood boiling. I don't know where the angels were in that moment. My blood was boiling, right? Mm-hmm. And why was my blood boiling? Because I told her to call the technician. And so then next thing you know, I'm on this rant. I said, let me break it down for you, honey. This is how it works. Our phone company is a third-party vendor, which means that they do not have their own technicians. And whenever something happens, they have to contract or outsource the technicians to go through the AT&T. So AT&T, they don't care about this third party's company customers. They care about their own customers first. Mm-hmm. So every time you call that 1-800 number and you're reporting the problem, you're talking to the little girl in the headset and she's typing it in and documenting anything, but nothing is progressing because this is ridiculous that we are 3 days with down phone lines. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is 2019, people. This 3 days, okay? This is ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. See, now you see the real Mary coming out.
I do. I like where this is going.
This is the real Mary.
Yeah.
All right. So I make it very clear. So I said, what are you going to do? She's like, I'm going to call the technician. I said, thank you. So then she transfers me to my office manager. And I'm like, let me just tell you what just happened. This is stuff that stops me from going from a 4 to a 5. This is what stops me from going from a pioneer to a visionary. Mm-hmm. Every time I have to go back and repeat myself to something that I just said. When I told her to call the technician, it doesn't matter if it's call the technician or call the president of the United States. Mm-hmm. That doesn't matter. It's that I need to be able to look at one of my team members. I need to have a team around me. And if I look at Yuri and you're on my team and I say on a scale of 1 to 10, what is my confidence level for Yuri to execute on my directive? Mm-hmm. And if I said a 4, which is what I would have said about this person, the problem is I can't be a visionary because I have to go back because there's a little piece of my subconscious brain that still needs to ask the question, did you call the technician? Mm-hmm. Do you follow this? There is a wasted amount of brain energy being used for tedious follow-up.
Right.
Okay? And that tedious follow-up sort of sucked away 3 of the great ideas that I had because I'm using brain power on something now that I shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. And so it's very important if you want to be, like what we say in my office, if you want to be that level 5 visionary, you have to have a team of level 10 executors.
Interesting. How are you then working with your staff to bring them up to level 10?
Well, I think that the first step in that process is, and this is a really great segue into the next part of this, because it's in order to do that, mm-hmm. I have to be a good communicator. Mm-hmm. So let me explain what I mean by this.
Okay.
And I don't know if men do this, and I don't like to separate things by men and women, but can we just accept for once that there's a difference between us?
Yes, we can, that exists. We'll go with it.
Thank you.
There's definitely a communication difference between men and women, but for the purpose of our conversation, we'll go.
Right. So one of the things is, like, if I'm going to expect that from my team, then mm-hmm. I have to be willing as a leader to step up and be very deliberate and impactful with the language that I choose to use. So I'm going